Since the beginning of this podcast, almost 100 episodes ago, I have been mining my 30-year Superman fandom, starting with that tattered red cape, within the larger context of the character's rich 85-year mythology, examining, discovering, and reconsidering the creative visions that have shaped the last son of Krypton. Now, our milestone 100th episode beckons, and the journey continues. Welcome to Digging for Kryptonite, a Superman fan journey. I'm your host, Anthony Desiato. Joining me to discuss Superman and Lois Season 2 is one of the hosts of Always Hold On to Arrow, Lance Laster. Welcome back.
Hey, how are you? Glad to be back.
Happy to have you back. Last time you were here was months ago. We talked about the Justice League Power Rangers miniseries. It was a little bit of a backdoor pilot for my Power Rangers podcast, Summoning the Zords. That was a lot of fun. The new podcast has been a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to having you on that one in the not too distant future. And we've been talking about what you're going to come on for. I think it'll be a lot of fun.
For sure. Yeah, looking forward to it. Should be good.
Nice. But of course, here we are now for some Superman talk. Superman and Lois specifically. So a lot to unpack here. This will be sort of a retrospective of season 2.
Mm-hmm.
I, of course, watched it as it was coming out. And then over the past few nights, I rewatched the whole season just because I wanted it all fresh. I wanted to see how it played on rewatch. Mm-hmm. And I want to get your takes on everything. I just want to say I enjoyed it the first time around. I really enjoyed it on rewatch. I thought it held up great. Some of the things that kind of bugged me a little bit the first time around, most of those were kind of smoothed out this time around. I still have a couple quibbles, which we'll talk about. But overall, I found it to be a very satisfying, fulfilling season. And I'm not ashamed to say, especially in that finale, man, it got me. I would say I was just tearing up a little bit, but I was like, it was a little bit more than that.
Really?
I got kind of emotional. Yeah. All of the parent-child farewells when it seemed like that was going to be it, especially as a dad, as I say all the time on the show, it really hit me hard. So we have a lot to talk about, but let me toss it to you first. Just sort of overall impressions of this season, especially as you were watching it while it was airing. Like, what was your sort of big picture take on season 2, especially compared to the first season? Like, did it live up to the first season, surpass it? Was it a letdown? What was your take?
I think it lived up to season 1 for sure. I think it maintained the same level of quality and excellence that season 1 was, in my opinion. I love this show. It is priority viewing for me when it is on. I think the biggest quibble that I have with the show in general is the fact that like they take these long hiatuses, and I'm like legit starving for more episodes. And so it's like, let's go. Like, I'm very excited about this show every single week. I can't wait to watch it. I think it's really well done, really well handled. I think that, there's always all these talks you hear all the time about like, we need to make Superman, more interesting. We need to modernize Superman. We need to do all this and this and that. This show is the one that I think gets it and does it like in the best way. And the things that people complain about and want from Superman, especially some of the vocal people out there who are very anti or pro whatever take that they want, this is the best option for that. I think this show, I think it encapsulates Superman as he ought to be, as he should be, and it has everything that a lot of fans want, I think.
Well said, man. I agree with all that, and I've said this before, and especially when we talked about the first season, but it's such a great example. And I know, of course, the comics have given Lois and Clark a son, John, and so we've seen that in the pages of the comics as well. But specifically on the show, as we know with comics and these characters generally, there often isn't a lot of movement or change or forward momentum. And what you see on the show is how they're able to retain the core of the character, yet move the mythology forward and open up this whole other pocket of his character. And
Yep.
it works. It works on its own. It works for fans of Smallville, like you and me,
Hmm.
right? Where no, they're not in the same continuity, but you watch this and you can sort of use that other show to fill in some fill in some blanks
Yeah.
in a spiritual sense, as far as maybe some of the weirdness that Lana's always referring to that went on
Yeah.
in Smallville back in the day. So it's great. And look, I grew up with the Triangle era Superman comics, and you
Okay.
you definitely get the sense there's a lot of love for that era in the
Hmm.
writers' room. A lot of the pulls. I mean, Mitchell Anderson comes straight from the Death of Superman
Yeah.
storyline. A very different character, really
Hmm.
just the same in name only, but nevertheless, you get a lot of pulls like that. So, yeah, I'm a huge fan of the show. As we're recording this, and this will come out a little bit before season 3 starts. Obviously, we're in a bit of a nebulous state right now. News could drop between this recording and the release. I don't know.
Very true.
I'm heading into the 3rd season, assuming this will be the last, hoping that they are able to give it some closure and go out
Mm.
strong. And if a 4th season materializes, great. But given all of the flux with CW and Warner Brothers Discovery, it's hard to see a season 4, but you never know. But
Yeah, you're right on that. And I think you have the right approach going into the season is just to like go in already understanding that this is probably the last dance, right? To borrow from another favorite media source of mine. So this is probably it. And so going into it knowing that, I think might help with digesting this season, and I think and hope that the creators all probably understand this as they were making it this season, and I'm because they seem to be pretty with it, so I think they would take this into consideration in their production for it.
yes. But before we dive fully into season 2, just a general question for you, because I know you're a Texas guy, and I know
Mhm.
one of the shows that was often cited as an influence on Superman and Lois. I certainly see it was Friday Night Lights, and I was a huge
Yeah.
fan of that. Were you a Friday Night Lights guy? Do you see the comparisons or what?
Yeah, in a lot of ways, I do like just in some of the ways it's shot, some of the color palettes that are used on the show, the way it kind of looks is reminds me very much of Friday Night Lights. And to answer your question, yes, I love Friday Night Lights. It's my favorite TV show. A lot of people don't really don't know that, and they're surprised to hear that, but it is my favorite TV show. And uh, yeah, I can get a lot of those vibes from it. Now, obviously, there's not as much football because it's not, but football plays a role. That's and it as it did in Friday Night Lights. But I can definitely see that comparison being made.
Friday Night Lights, I wouldn't put it at my absolute top, the top of my list, but it's really up there. It's
Oh
so
yeah.
high up there, and I'm so overdue for a rewatch. And now a couple of cast members are doing a rewatch podcast. I'm kind of like,
Hmm.
oh, I kind of want to get back into it. It's so good.
Man, rewatch podcasts are like with the people who are on the show is coming in vogue now, and so hopefully, like some Arrow alums will do one, and then maybe I could take a page out of our friend Zach's book, and and get on their rewatch podcast because man, that'd be fun.
That would be so fun, and I can't. I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be
I wouldn't
surprised. The
be
thing is,
either.
like who? I'm trying to like who could you foresee from the Arrow world launching something like that?
From the Arrow world launching a podcast about Arrow. Hmm. Steven would be a guest. Steven wouldn't do it himself.
Right? Yeah. No.
Neither would Emily. David Ramsey's too busy. I could see
Echo.
Colton Haynes being the host.
Okay.
I could see that. And he has enough, he has a lot of fans and he has a lot of cachet, so he get a lot of eyes on it and ears on it very, very quickly, I think. I think Colton Haynes is probably the pick.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll put that out there. We'll see. What about Mr. Terrific? What Echo? Is that his name?
Oh, Echo Kellum. Yeah, he'd be another good choice. Um, Rick Gonzalez would probably be like a really good podcaster, but he's on Law and Order now, so like he's super legit.
He is. He's on organized crime. I got to tell you, this is such a tangent, but whatever.
Yeah,
So, like probably most people, right? I ebbs and flows with my watching of Law and Order over the
same,
decades. There
same.
was
Yeah,
a stretch years ago I watched it all the time, and then not for a long
yep,
time. And now the past couple seasons since Chris Maloney came back, like I've been watching
hmm,
organized crime. I've been watching SVU again.
yep.
And what's funny is look, I watch a lot of stuff for the podcast. That's one thing that I just watch,
Just
and
to
my
enjoy.
and my wife, it's like the one thing my wife and I don't watch together. It's just like it's like relaxing, but it's grisly to watch. So
Mhm.
it's kind of odd, but
It is.
it's not for any purpose other than just to watch something,
Just
and
to
I
watch it,
enjoy it.
yeah.
Yeah. All right, so Superman and Lois season 2. So this was a season, and we can jump around. We don't have, this is not an episode
Mhm.
by episode breakdown. We don't have to go chronologically. We could jump around. But this was a season that gave us a huge Doomsday tease. It gave us a version of Bizarro and Bizarro World. It gave us a very obscure version of Parasite.
Mhm.
And then sort of on the character front, we had the deterioration of the Lana and Kyle relationship. We had John Kent huffing kryptonite and giving himself powers. We had the developing relationship between Jordan and Sarah and the strain that his secret was putting on them. We had Superman at odds with General Lane's replacement at the DoD, as we
Mhm.
mentioned, Mitch Anderson. A lot going on. We had the arrival of Nat from John Henry's world and all of the emotions that brought up for her and John Henry and Lois. So there's a big season, a lot going on. The first question I want to pose, this is something we talk about quibbles. Like this is something that I want to I want to ask you. So in the
Okay.
first season, we had this big bait and switch, right, with Captain Luther, who
Yeah.
turns out to be John Henry. Now, I was totally on board with him being Captain Luther. I'm like, this is a great take on the character. Lex is my
Mhm.
favorite villain. I'm there. And then we got the reveal, and I was even happier because John Henry has not had many on-screen interpretations. I am a fan of the Shaq movie, but
Yeah.
you don't see a lot of John Henry, so I was thrilled, and I love this take on John Henry. So I was thrilled as could be. This season, we got something similar with a huge Doomsday tease.
Mhm.
We end the first season with these quakes beneath Smallville. Something's trying to get out. We see that gloved hand. It's like, oh my god,
Yeah.
it's Doomsday in the containment suit. We you
Yeah.
know
Right off the bat, like you were talking, you were breaking down the season. I was like, well, we have to talk about the elephant in the room. The elephant in the room is the ultimate doomsday tease for about because for about 3 or 4 episodes, it was like, holy crap, are they going to do this? And I was like, if they do this, this is automatically S tier. Like if they do this and pull this off, this is amazing. And I could not believe that they were going to do it. And we they used their, as Zach would say, they used our comic book knowledge against us because the look of the suit was the doomsday was that doomsday suit. Like everything about it was just like, oh man, this is totally going to be doomsday. They're doing it, on live action properly, and doing it on TV on a TV budget. So like, man, this is even better. And then it's like, nope, okie doke. It's Bizarro. And kind of like I've been saying, and Kevin and I have been saying on our show, um, we've been talking about season 5, and for most of our talk on season 5, we kept saying, it should have been Tommy, and talking about Prometheus, and it probably should have been Tommy, but Josh Segura is so good that it makes us kind of forget about that and just kind of roll with it. It was like, what, he's so good as Prometheus, we're gonna let that slide. I think of season 2 the same way. We got the rug pulled out from underneath us with the Doomsday stuff, and as exciting as that would have been, they gave us Bizarro, and the Bizarro was cool. It worked, so I'm gonna roll with it.
Well said. I think that's probably where I land too. I think I'm mostly at peace with it. Not
Mm-hmm.
as at peace with it as I think you are. I think you're in a better place
Okay,
with how it shook out. But
it's fair.
I'm okay overall. I mean, look, my audience knows Death of Super is what got me into comics. It's a huge thing for me.
Mm.
So to be building towards that, and then like you said, to have the rug pulled out, I definitely felt a certain way.
Mm-hmm.
I guess the question I have is this whole bait and switch. And now as we're heading into season 3, and I know, our mutual friend Zach, he put up a poll on Twitter. It's like, who do you think Bruno, or, Chad Coleman, right? He's allegedly coming in to play Bruno Mannheim. It's like, who is he actually playing?
Oh,
And so like,
our guy from Arrow,
yes. But so like
Tobias
that,
Church.
but so I guess my question is it, where's the line between, I don't know, overdoing it or misstepping and continuing to have this bait and switch versus like, this is just their thing. And it's just
Mm-hmm.
part of the show is that there's going to be some sort of trick. I don't know. I don't know how I feel about this. Like going in every season being like, oh, I wonder what the trick is going to be.
Honestly, I think it's a CW thing, because like there's always two versions of something, right? Like Smallville, there are two Dr. Hamiltons. There are two of fill in the blank on Smallville, right? Because went for 10 years. That's just the first example that popped in my head. Arrow, there are three, four, five black canary people that have had the title Canary, right? Like there's like all these different bait and switches that are happening on these shows all of the time because I think and I think this is just the way that Hollywood does stuff, right? Like and especially when they're adapting these things, they don't think they can do the big idea, you know, when they want to, when they like when they initially start doing something, and so they just kind of tease a version of it as like an Easter egg, and then they just kind of like zag and just go a different direction. But the thing is, unfortunately slash fortunately, they stick around long enough where they end up being able to do the thing. And it's like, well, it's kind of it's a weird catch-22, right? Because like they didn't think they'd be successful enough to pull off what they wanted to try, so they just kind of hedge on it, and then they end up being successful enough to where they actually do it, and it's not as good as the thing they teased first. It's a weird dynamic, but that's what ends up happening. And honestly, to fix all this, they should just go all in every single time instead of just kind of hedging their bets, right? If they wanted to go big, just go big or go home all of the time. And I think you will, you will be eventually rewarded for it. I think, unless it's just awful, and then you'll learn your lesson. But I think people in Hollywood are afraid of learning a lesson because the investors, especially the people that invest in these things, put too much money into it for them to be patient enough to learn a lesson because those people have already taken their risk to make their money, and now they don't want to lose any of it.
That's an apt analysis, and I think that probably accounts for it at least in part. But to your point about going all in, I agree, and especially these days where I'm not breaking any new ground here, we're seeing series run for fewer seasons, individual
Mm-hmm.
seasons have less episodes. In terms of holding something back, it's sort of becoming this thing of like holding back for what? It's like
Yeah,
you kind of like you said, go all in and put it all out there.
yeah,
I,
you
I
just got to do it.
I will say, in fairness, and this was how I kind of made my peace with it, especially watching it again. They ultimately gave us a version of the story. Like they gave, like for those few episodes where you thought it was Doomsday, you had that
Mm-hmm.
experience of feeling like you were watching a version of a Death of Superman adaptation.
Yeah.
That battle at the mines
Mm-hmm.
when, as it turns out to be, Bizarro is in that containment suit and you think it's Doomsday, and the two of them are going at it for those few minutes. I turned to my wife. I was like, that's the Doomsday fight I thought we were going to get on Smallville, and they did it
Mm-hmm.
here. Even though it ended up being Bizarro, and as soon as that helmet broke and you saw it,
Yeah.
it was. But for those few minutes, I had that experience, and
Mm-hmm.
so and later on in the season, we had a couple of versions of a world without Superman type
We
story.
did.
When the military takes him out, and when they use the red the red sun on him, and
Mm-hmm.
it looks like he's laid out like he's in a coffin, and they're wheeling
Yeah.
him to be taken away. And then of course when he's stuck in the Bizarro world for a month, and you see how everyone deals with that with him not being there.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like they're giving you versions of this, and I can appreciate that, and I think that ultimately allowed me to make peace with it.
Yeah. Yeah, you got to pay attention to the nuggets that they're giving you sometimes, especially like on TV. Now, like, granted, like I'm a big proponent of saying that like, TV and movies, especially at this day and age, are too similar to think that they're different in a lot of ways because there was a time when, like one was the lesser of the other as far as like entertainment, but now like everything's on a level playing field. And so it annoys me when people think that it's not, but that's a different discussion for a different day. But in TV though, they even though like the playing field is more level, the stuff that goes into it is still lesser than movies. And so when you take that into consideration, you got to be appreciative of some of the stuff that they try and do when they do it well.
No, and that's the thing, and I can appreciate the story that they were telling. And look, as much as one day I really hope to see the story that got me into comics adapted properly on television. I do think that is the best way to do it in an episodic format. But at this,
Absolutely.
but at the same time, and especially in the context of the show, in terms of what they're going to get more mileage out of, it probably was the story that they told this season. And so they gave us enough of those elements of Doomsday and Death of Superman, where again, you can kind of have that experience and then it becomes something else. But
Yeah.
you can enjoy it for those moments. I have to say though, the idea of Doomsday in the containment suit, uh, I, the next time, who knows, the next time we'll have a a live action Superman TV series. But I feel like
Hmm.
that's an effective, a more cost effective way to sort of realize the character on screen. It's still an iconic look, and
Yeah.
but you can spend a little bit more time and not have to do the full monster, right? And
Hmm.
maybe save a little bit on your budget. Like I feel like that was a clever, that was a clever way to do it. It
It
works.
was. Yeah. Yeah, they have to be clever when you have different resources, right? Or when you have less resources, right? This is why, baseball reference. This is why Moneyball is a thing, right? Like,
Yeah. Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Again, we mentioned, of course, that you host Always Hold On to Arrow. You must have felt so at home when Jordan started throwing that hood on
oh yeah, yeah.
to go
I
into
was wait,
action.
I was waiting for my music. I was waiting for my pulsating, my pulsating rhythmic workout music.
Yeah. Again, so much to talk about. Again, that's certainly the doomsday of it all, and sort of where I've landed on that front. As far as their take on Bizarro, how did you like that aspect of the season? And there too, again, we're talking about a bait and switch. At that point in the season, when we get the Bizarro reveal, I'm like, okay, Bizarro is going to be our antagonist for the season, and Bizarro
Hmm.
only has a finite role to play as well. But how did you like this version of Bizarro, and what? How do you feel about the character generally?
Um, well, in general, how I feel about the character, it's he's a little janky. And the thing is, they make him that way because they make him into like he eventually kind of becomes this kind of comedic type of character. And some of the adventures that they have him in end up having a little bit lighter and comedic tone, especially like when you go to Bizarro World and things are kind of played for a laugh, like the speaking backwards, up is down, day is night, that type, the whole Seinfeld thing, right? When they're talking about Bizarro stuff, and so a lot of that is played for a laugh, and this made it like it was kind of like like a like a Sam Raimi version of Bizarro World, where like it's a little twisted, right? And like a backwards version of you is like backwards in the metaphysical sense, right? Like as opposed to like a literal sense. It's like oh, like if you are a good natured and caring, kind person on regular sphere Earth, on Bizarro World, you're like just like you're an angsty and you know uncaring, a non-empathetic type of person. Like it's like, oh, they went that way with it. Like that is interesting. And that's an interesting take on what, a bizarre version of yourself could be like. And of course the whole theme, throughout the show, especially with the boys and like with all the characters, like who am I in this world? What is my place? What is my role? And all of that makes sense. With Superman, like he's like, I have to earn this every single day. Like, what does that like? We get to see a bizarre version of him as somebody that like sought the fame and sought the fortune and sought the attention and the stuff that he doesn't do, the stuff that we like Superman for, he was doing the opposite of on the Bizarro Earth. Like it's like, oh, and like an unconfident Lois, a Lois that was like just kind of staying at home and not doing stuff and just kind of meek in the presence of Superman. It's like, no, like the Lois we love is the one that stands right at him, tells him what to do, and lets him know what's up. That's the Lois that we love. And so when we see that Lois, it's like, well, this is interesting. This is an interesting take. I like it. It's not just that the Earth is a cube and like we can get a joke in and out here. And I'm all for jokes, but this is they did an interesting take on it where they did not play it up for comedic effect because the show is not played up for comedic effect, and so they kept it within the tone.
Absolutely, I agree, and I too, I really dug this version of Bizarro and Bizarro World. I've talked about this on the show. Generally speaking, that the whole Bizarro of it all, with Superman generally, doesn't really light my fire. There are certain instances, and I continue to hold up Superman the Animated Series as my favorite iteration of Bizarro. I love the
Mhm.
way he was utilized there, and sort of the blend between comedy and tragedy that you can get with that
Yes.
character. and here, like you said, yeah, we're not leaning into the comedy aspect, but this is a tragic depiction. And it was really interesting the way they structured this season, where you meet Bizarro first and you don't know any of this. You
Hmm.
don't know any of this backstory. And then we start to peel back the layers. And especially when Clark spends his episode on Bizarro World and you get all of
Yeah.
these flashbacks and you see how everything fell apart for him, even down to his physical condition, right? Huffing
Hmm.
the green kryptonite, and it turns his skin white and cracks
Yeah.
and all of that. And you see how he turns into this monster that we had met earlier in the season, and who was killed at the hands of Mitch Anderson, and so getting
Yeah.
that you really you have that tragic aspect, and you see again these differences that led him down the wrong path. Again, the fact that they went public, right? The family went public. There was no secret
Hmm.
identity, and like you said, sought the fame, sought the endorsements and the magazine covers, and
Yeah.
priorities were askew. And
He
when
became
we
Homelander.
yeah, yeah. And when we get I guess, but the earliest flashback on Bizarro World, where Bizarro Clark Cal is talking to Tal Rowe, right? And he talks about, oh,
Mhm.
we bought this farm in Smallville, right? You don't get the full backstory, but this wasn't where he was raised, right? So who
Yeah.
knows what the values were that were instilled in him?
Hmm.
Clearly not the same. That's one of the things that I really loved about this season, just generally, was there are a lot of instances where it really tapped into the core of what makes what makes him Superman.
Yeah.
um, when again, while talking about while we're on Bizarro World, and he has the final reckoning with Mitch Anderson, right? This guy who's they've been at odds for this whole season, and Clark's still talking about helping him,
Yeah.
and
Well,
and
yeah,
there's
because Anderson has that great line. He's like, all those awful things I did and said to you, and you still would have saved me anyway. And Clark just looks at him, just matter of factly, yeah, buddy. Like, like, why didn't you understand this?
yeah, yeah. He said every life is worth saving. Yeah, so I mean, a lot of great moments like that. But yeah, again, I was a little bit on the fence with the Bizarro reveal initially.
Hmm.
Again, I was disappointed that we weren't getting Doomsday. Bizarro's not typically my favorite. I didn't know where it was going, but I really did enjoy. And the fact that we had backward speak, but not the kind of backward speak that we get in the comics. And we had
Exactly. Yeah.
subtitle. It was, oh my God, I
That
can't tell you
worked.
how
That
happy I
worked.
was.
Exactly, that worked great. Like, it was basically like they were speaking Zatanna's language, right? Like, essentially what they were doing. But yeah, that's another aspect of it. It wasn't, me am good. It was just everything backwards. Like, it's like, oh, that's brilliant. Like a subtle change and tweak. But like you mentioned, like Bizarre, like you know why they used them though, right?
To be able to use Tyler Hecklin.
No, well, I mean that's part of it, like it's some cost saving. But like the Bizarro, if you ask like the average person who does not read comics and does not know anything all that much about Superman, they know the basics, right? They know Clark Kent, Daily Planet, Lois Lane, Perry White, Jimmy Olsen, Lex Luthor. After that, they know Bizarro, right? And then after that they might know Doomsday, right? The Doomsday fake out stuff was for like the fans who could recognize that stuff, but everybody else, there's like, oh yeah, there's an opposite version of Superman that he fights. That's like what most people think. And then outside of that, like you know the average person doesn't know any of the other Superman villains. Like we do because we love the character, and yes, Superman has a great rogues gallery for those out there who said that he doesn't. But for the average person, they only know two. They only know Lex Luthor, and they know Bizarro. Some bonus points for some people that might know Brainiac and Darkseid, just because of recent stuff, right? But outside of that, nobody knows any of the others.
And how many people do you think know the Ali Alston version of Parasite?
Very little. Very little. The funny thing is, she gave me more Granny vibes than she did Parasite. And because for part of me, I was thinking, it's like, oh man, are they doing some third world, like fourth world stuff like here? Like, are we getting into New Gods? Is like that something like this whole like finding yourself? Like she's training these people. Is like, is this going to lead us to dark side? Because for a second, like I was thinking, it's like, what if in that middle of that symbol thing of that pendant, it creates an omega or something? Like I would have lost my mind if they would have done something like that. And that portal that's in the mines, I was like, that's very Boom Tube esque. Like I could see it. I could see it working. And she looks like Granny Goodness. Like she's not like you know a short like Kathy Bates size Granny Goodness as she is like in the animated series. But like I could see a Granny Goodness like if she wanted to disguise herself on Earth looking like somebody like that, like makes total sense.
Yes. If ever there were an opportunity for another bait and switch. I mean, like, that's the thing. That's where, look, I love the season. I just want to be clear.
Uh
But
huh.
it's like, this is an instance where I had some mixed feelings with the Doomsday Bizarro thing. But then I remember seeing that speculation that Allie was actually going to be Grant. I was like, ooh, like that. And I agree with everything you said. The look is there, not exactly the same, but you
Yeah,
could buy into it. A lot of seemingly apparent connection points that you could make, and it's like no, like we're not going there. But it's like why
yeah,
not?
I know exactly, exactly. Especially because they cast somebody to be Bruno Mannheim for the very next season. It's like,
I know. I know. It's like, look, the bait and switch. This is your thing. This is your time
uh
to
huh.
shine. Come on. Oh, one last thing with the Bizarro speak. Bizarro's come up a bunch of times on this podcast, and in virtually every instance, my guest and I have talked about how we don't like the backward speak, and this comes up on Twitter too.
Mhm.
Who out there, an audience, I'll pose this to you, who likes the traditional comic backward speak? Because again, from all the people I'm talking to and hearing from, it seems like people don't like it. I really wish this is something that could just go away.
No way.
Yet I don't know why this still continues to be utilized. It drives me nuts.
For comedic effect. That's why.
I guess. I guess. It's just frustrating. I really I wish like subtitles would be great in the comics for
Hmm.
that version of backward speak.
That'd be kind of cool.
It's just not worth it. It's not worth the work. That's what I've kind of, and
Mm,
maybe as a kid it was. As a kid I was probably like, wow, what are they trying to say? Now I'm just like, I don't care enough to try to
yeah.
decipher what this is about. I get the gist of it and kind of scan over it. But yeah, I thought it was cool the way they did that on the show.
Mhm.
That was a nice twist on it. So
Yeah.
we're talking about Bizarro World and all this stuff, but I want to jump to the more human side of things for a moment here.
Mhm.
I'm a huge fan of the Cushing family, their
Okay.
storyline and their role on the show, because I
Mhm.
think they serve a vital function. Yet I do get the sense, seeing people tweet about the show and things like that. Not that we can rely on Twitter necessarily
Yeah.
for a
Twitter's not a real
consensus,
place.
but I don't know that I don't know that people are always thrilled when they pop up on screen and when we spend time with their storyline. But how do you feel about the Cushings and their role on the show just generally?
I've grown to like them, and I thought I was going to hate them. When especially when like you start seeing things that are like when you at the very beginning when you see the castings and who's going to be on the show and then like who are these characters? It's like so Lana's family and I was like, please don't do this like some love triangle thing. Like please don't do that. I'm so glad and grateful that they have not gone that direction. And but yeah, I've grown to love them. They are more like Kyle, for example. I thought that he was going to be the easiest person to not like, but I like Kyle. Like he's grown some. He's made some mistakes. And he like they kind of force you to like really watch them and kind of be engaged with them. The one thing I'll say about the Cushings though is that they shouldn't have given them a second child because they seem to forget that she exists.
I have to imagine in the writers' room there's some regret there, where they got a few episodes in, they're like, God damn it, like we really should have just had
Yeah,
Sarah be an only child because she
exactly.
does feel perfunctory, you
She
know.
does, yeah, and also the fact that the actress that plays Sophie had like this huge growth spurt between seasons one and two, and so she's not like this little kid like she was like in the first season, and where they had their playing young. Now she's taller than Sarah, and they're trying to hide it, and every scene that she's in,
I clocked that too when I was doing the rewatch, and in one of the final episodes when they're standing side by side, you don't get a
yeah,
lot of instances of like that, like for that exact reason. And I was like, oh yeah, like same height or she's even taller.
yeah,
So yeah, I totally agree with that. But on the note of Kyle, and I talked about this when we discussed season one last year, but this is a character who could have been so one dimensional, so
hmm,
one note. Whitney Fordman comes to mind.
absolutely,
Could have been a character that you really are not invested in and is really more of an obstacle.
yeah,
And you watch the pilot and you're not quite sure, okay, where are they going with this character? And He was my MVP of season one, which might sound like a crazy,
Whoa.
but he was my MVP of season one because I was just so won over by the character and the actor. I thought Eric Valdez did a great job, and it's like you
Yeah.
really you start to see who this guy is, where he's coming from, especially in season one. Though he was misguided at times, it all stemmed from wanting to help the town.
Hmm.
And here, I thought their storyline this season, and Lana in particular, Lana had some great stories this season, I thought. But
Yeah.
with Kyle and with the family generally, it's heartbreaking. Talk about the tragedy because those two are stronger than they've ever been at the start
Hmm.
of this season. They're clicking. He's supporting her in her bid for mayor, which we get
Yep.
to a couple episodes in, and then the bomb drops, right? That he's had this affair
Hmm.
that has ended a while ago, but he had this affair with the bartender Tanya, and it all comes to a head at Sarah's quinceanera, and there's this
Yep.
whole dramatic reveal, and it's heartbreaking. And the reason why I say I love the role that they serve on the show is that, again, you do a whole Arrow podcast. I've watched most of the Arrowverse. I fell off on pretty much all of the shows after
Hmm.
Crisis, as I've talked about. But
You're not the
uh,
only one. It's okay.
but look, when all those Arrowverse shows, when they were at their best, there was some great stuff, and I can always appreciate that. But one of the things that I think kind of wore thin for me was in virtually all of the shows, it really became, to me at least, all about the superheroics, the teams, the bunkers. And I look at the Cushings on the show, and it's like it helps to ground the show. It helps to get us invested in something that's not the overall plot of the season. And I think it's just it really helps to to make the show relatable and to make it human.
Well, yeah. Well, like speaking of some of these other Arrowverse shows, that's why of course, this all happens in the first couple of seasons with these things, but that's why Joe was so vital to the Flash, right? That's why his presence was so vital. Same thing with Moira in the first two seasons. That's why she was so important. It balanced it out thing, and on Black Lightning, that's why like him being a teacher and going to school every day and you see the people in the community that he's helped because he's been a teacher, he's a veteran teacher, right? So there's lots of people in the community that are still there that see him as Mr. Pierce, this teacher that helped me with something, right? And so and Jen and like in her activities at school, just being a kid at school, and and same thing with Anissa, like when she's a young adult in the community, like doing these types of things. So the superheroics were a part of the show, but they weren't the only thing. And like as with everything, it gets away from that the longer it goes on. But it's that's just what that's the heart. Some of the things that we miss were those things. Like another thing, Supergirl in season 2, the whole Maggie and the Maggie storyline. I love what they like. I love Maggie. I love that actress as Maggie. I like Maggie. I love Maggie Sawyer as a character. And like all that, the whole thing that they were doing, with with uh, with Alex, like she and Alex, that whole season was great. And then it's gone. I was like, what are you guys doing? This is my favorite part of season 2. And like, and now it's like all for naught. So I see what you're saying.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, I enjoyed that character and that storyline on Supergirl as well. So again, I always appreciate the Cushings, and I will say, and props to Eric Valdez, the scene where Kyle knows that Lana's going to find out, right?
Yeah.
And they're inside the barn, and he's talking to Clark, and Clark's like, "Hey, is everything okay?" And he's like, "No, like I don't think it is." It just, like, I've been married for a few years now. I've not had an affair. I don't plan on having an affair. But the way, like, it just made me feel the way it would feel, what I imagine it would feel like if I were in that situation and like I knew it was all going to fall apart. I just felt like
Hmm.
the writing and the acting just really captured that. You really felt for it. It was like I said, it was really heartbreaking to see these characters who had gone through so much and had gotten to a good spot come undone over something that wasn't even, it's not like he was currently having the affair, right? This was
Yeah.
something from the past. Though I will say, when
The
they
thing is, it
have,
doesn't matter.
it doesn't matter. And I will say, even though I've been a Kyle defender, look, the affair generally not great, but also
Yeah.
when he and Lana are talking at the house and she's like, "How long did it go on for?" He's like, "6 months." I was like, "Buddy, 6 months." I mean, this is pretty extensive here.
Yeah. It's like, come on, man. Come on, man.
Yeah. So, and too, I give the show credit because I think, especially at this point, it would have been really easy to sideline Kyle.
Hmm.
But and he's not in every episode, but you get a lot of instances where you see him and Lana trying to navigate what co-parenting is going to look like. A
The
lot of scenes
kids,
with him and
like
yeah,
life with life with two parents. Like, yeah, they're there's a lot of people out there that can relate to that.
yeah, absolutely. No, it was good. I really, that stuff really resonated. Now we talk about Lana. Now let's talk about the biggest piece first. We get a secret identity reveal.
We do. I like how he reveals his secret the exact same way each time, right? And 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 the thing is, I get it, because if you need to show somebody that you're Superman, right? You need to do the most super of your abilities, and that's to fly. That's the one thing that everybody would love to do that, right? Heat vision, okay, whatever. Like X-ray vision, okay, cool, whatever. To fly, like it's so like that's the best way to do it, right? Like he does it the exact same way. Like he takes off his glasses and then just slowly starts to float up and then look down. It's just like, oh, okay.
I know. I love. I know. I love that. That's just, and it makes it like that's his thing. Like he's like, well, when I reveal my secret, that's what I do. Glasses come
Hmm.
off, I float up.
Yeah.
He threw in a little super breath, which was a cool effect, right?
That
Freezing
was cool, yeah.
the tree.
There was always like a hint of something else, right? Because like when he revealed it to the boys, he picked up the truck and held it up in the air.
Yeah,
So God, that pilot was so good. That pilot is so amazing.
it absolutely is. But yeah, a little cherry on top. Let's put a little sauce on it, right? It's like the
Yeah.
flying gets you most of the way there, but just put a little extra there. But it's great. Look, especially for us fans of Smallville, right, where
Mm.
we had to wait. Yes, there were times where Lana found out, and then there were various machinations. We had to wait until the end of season 6.
Yeah.
6, and
Yeah.
we're not talking 15 episode seasons, full 22 episode seasons.
Yep.
TV's changed a lot.
TV's
This
changed a
really
whole
reminds
lot.
you of that.
Yeah. It's like and Smallville is another one of those things where like I was there every week, every episode, right? And it's just like, people, it's one of those, like, that meme where it's like, you haven't, had to watch a season 1 week at like 1 week at a time, year in, year in, year out, and then wait the entire summer for it to come back, and it shows, right? Like it's one of those types of things. Like, oh, it's like y'all don't know how it was.
It's true.
Especially if the season ended on a cliffhanger, and then you had to wait 6 months for it to come back, like it's torture.
But that's why, and again, not to take us on a tangent, but that's why I think it's. I don't know that I would ever, given how television has changed so much, and again, shorter runs, shorter seasons, the ability to binge. It's like living with that show every week, speculating about how those cliffhangers were going to be resolved over
Yeah,
every summer hiatus for a decade.
yeah,
You just lived in it in a way that you don't really now. And hand in hand with
no.
that, just my age as I was watching it, there's a lot wrapped up in it. But
Mhm.
I think just again the way that you watch it's cemented in a way that other shows
Other shows don't.
they
Yeah,
don't, they can't.
they can't. And I try to think of like some other things, like for example, like you know like the only thing that kind of comes close is like Game of Thrones, right? Like when it was on, like you didn't binge Game of Thrones like when it was like on in its heyday. Like you and like I love like the whole conversation aspect of it, like week to week, right? And I got a taste of that again with House of the Dragon. It's just like, oh man, like it's like when you're excited about a show every single week, and like it gets there, and then it's all you can think about for the next week. Superman and Lois is like that for me. That show was like that for me. Some of the like in the early days of the Disney Plus shows, it was like that as well. Especially like when WandaVision first hit, there was a conversation when Mando first hit, especially after that first episode, and you're just like, oh my god, and like literally like like there was this like light came on everywhere. Everybody was like, oh my god, this is what we're doing here. I'm so in.
Yeah. No, I hear you. Yeah, certainly I think having that excitement, especially when it's a weekly release, I think,
Mhm.
there you can still have an aspect of that. But as far as this identity reveal, this was one of the things I was a little mixed on in season 1, the fact that he had never confided in Lana. I guess
Mhm.
I always from the comics and from Smallville, I do like this idea that she's someone, maybe the one that he shares this with at that point in his journey. Who he
Mhm.
actually is. So the fact that we were dealing with Alana who was in the dark at the outset of the show, I was like, okay, like I rolled with it, but it definitely took me a minute. But I watched
Yeah,
season two, and
because
I yeah
yeah, because like because traditionally Lana knows like when he you know but when he leaves, like when he leaves Smallville, she knows what's up. And when he comes back, she knows, like she's one of the people that just knows. So yeah, this is an interesting change.
yeah. I mean, I'm trying to think. Superman the animated series, she didn't know, right? She had that encounter with him as Superman, and she very quickly pieced together that it was.
Oh no, in the animated series, she did know because she shocks him, right?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, yeah.
and she's like, well, I just kept it to myself.
Yeah.
And so I was like, oh, that's cool. But also, she's still carrying a torch, which I thought was a nice little wrinkle with that show.
Yeah. But again, I like the idea, especially the modern comics. This idea of like him taking her for a flight before he leaves Smallville and like revealing
Yeah.
who he is. So again, that took a little getting used to, but watching the secret identity reveal in season 2 of Superman and Lois, it was a great payoff. It made me feel like
Hmm.
it was worth it because you got to see this. It wasn't something that we heard about. It wasn't something that we got a flashback of with
Yeah.
different actors playing them as kids. Like you got to see the two of them have this moment, and I thought it was great. It was very satisfying.
Yeah. And I think she had a reasonable reaction to this, right? She didn't hate him. She didn't immediately like she didn't like be like, okay, well that's cool, and then just kind of move on. She had to kind of deal with it and process that for a little bit. And she's like, I need some time to wrap my head around this. And I like how she was. I guess reasonable is probably the best word, right? She took the amount like the appropriate amount of time to kind of like let it sink in that the most famous person in the world like is her best friend, like probably the most important person in the world. It's like I mean, like you can't like because you can't really quantify like who Superman is like in real life, and like if you found out that somebody was Superman, and so like it's something to that effect. It's like, oh, it's like that's a super holy crap moment, and so it's like, yeah, you need some time.
Yeah. No, I thought her reaction to everything was very fair. It's great when she says, how did I not see this? And he's like, people see what they want to see. And I like that little wrinkle because it's true. Yes,
Yes.
it's ridiculous the idea that a pair of glasses would throw people off, but again, you're not looking for it. You wouldn't be
Hmm.
thinking it. So it makes sense, right? You see Superman as this larger than life character. So why
Yes.
would you see him in the Kent farm, at the Kent
Hmm.
farm?
Yeah.
So that made sense. But the thing that really stood out to me, I think, the most about all of this was one thing that I've sort of noted, especially in season 1, is anytime Lana talked about how they dated in high school, she
Hmm.
always kind of downplayed it, especially talking to
Yes.
Lois, which I guess makes sense, right? That's his wife. I understand. But
Yeah.
it was always sort of like, oh, like we're just dear friends. Yeah, like we dated for a little bit, but it was always kind of minimized. Yet
Yeah.
when he reveals his secret, one of the first things she asks was about whether or not he really loved her. Why didn't he come back for her?
Hmm.
And we get that little flashback to the car accident that Clark saved Lana and Pete from when they were kids, which I had totally
Yeah.
forgotten before I rewatched this. I was like, oh yeah, like there was that. And right before that, she had whispered to him, "I love you." So
Yeah.
I like.
That spawned a lot of really great memes, by the way.
Oh, did it?
I'm sure you can imagine like the internet taking that and doing what they do with it. Because, but
Oh, I gotta look. I
remember
missed
that.
that. I missed that. Okay.
It was very funny.
But I don't know. I just kind of not that I necessarily want it to be the case that she's unhappy or that she's always carried this torch for him. But I like the idea that there was more there. And
Well,
in
not
terms
only
of
that, but I think it's a immediate what if. It's like when you find out like your ex was Superman, you're just like, well, crap. Like you think to yourself, and especially because she knows that his wife is Lois, she's like, well, I could have been that, right? Like you immediately start to think about those types of things. Even like even if there's something in your life that you really wanted to do and you couldn't do it, and then somebody close to you does that exact same thing, you're like, well, your immediate thought, like whether you want to admit it or not, is like, well, I could have done that. Like it just happens, right? Like I have a friend that played in the NBA. I wanted to play in the NBA. Of course, I was just like, well, I that could have been me. And it's like, of course you think that, right? But it wasn't. So, you just got to deal. And that's kind of what happened with Lana there.
Yes. Yeah, no, absolutely. I also have to say one of my favorite moments from the season is in that episode right after the reveal where Lois and Lana have it out, right? And we
Hmm.
we we learn that Lana's actually more upset with Lois because
Yeah.
Lois knew that she had this secret yet still pursued a friendship with Lana.
Hmm.
And I thought that was an interesting angle here. Anytime, right, they're able to subvert the expectation of what a reaction is going to be or anything
Yeah.
like that is great. And I think this is a good example of that. But my favorite part is when Lois goes back to the farm and she says to Clark, "You never guess who Lana is, who hates even more than you right now." And Clark goes, "Kyle." It's so made me laugh because it's hilarious. And it's also like, yeah, that'd be a pretty safe
Uh-huh.
bet. But it was great. And I have to say, I always love the Clark Lana scenes, but big surprise as a
Yeah.
Smallville fan. But
Hmm.
especially this incarnation of the characters and their dynamic. There's a warmth there. There's this familiarity. It's what I don't mean to always bring up Smallville, but it's like how could you not?
We have to
It's
always hold on to it, though.
we oh is that what they say?
Yeah.
Uh, it's what I always hoped that Smallville would have been able to achieve with the Clark Lana relationship, and it just we didn't get that, but it's that
You know
familiarity.
what? We did. We got 30 seconds of it in Bride. Like,
Yes.
we got 30 seconds of Lana being like, you know what? Maybe Clark and Lana weren't meant to be together. And then Clark just kind of shrugs and they just kind of move on. Like, they understand that they're not meant to be together and they were about to move on. Right. And then, all hell broke loose. And then, second half of season 8 happened and we know what happened there.
Yes. I know every time I watch Superman and Lois and I see this Lana, I'm like, man, it's just so weird. She's not walking around emitting kryptonite
Yeah, I
radiation.
know.
It's just like, it just feels wrong. So that's the thing. Like this show gives us what I had always hoped Smallville would. And so I love, in one of the early, I think the season premiere when, Lois isn't sharing with Clark why she's been so closed off
Mhm.
after Natalie's arrival, and Kyle's feeling some sort of way with Lana spending so much time helping the mayoral candidate at that point in
Yeah.
the season, and they have a conversation in the kitchen. Like there's a lot of great stuff, and after Lana finds out about Kyle and they have their heart to heart at the diner, Clark and Lana,
Yeah.
there are a lot of great scenes where I think you see that comfort, that trust that they have with each other. I'm really excited moving into season 3 to see how this plays out now. At a deeper level now that she knows who he is, because there was so much going on towards the end of this season, and I'm excited to get more scenes with them.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. And I have to trust the track record of the people doing the show, but they do kind of have put themselves into a little bit of a pickle because now so many people know the secret, right?
Hmm.
So Lana knows, Sarah knows, Kyle doesn't, Chrissy Beppo knows, but Lucy doesn't. So it's like who else is going to find out at this point, because it's a lot of people, and then there's particular individuals that don't know that could cause a lot of trouble if they do find out, and if they find out that everybody other people knew and were lying to them about it. And in if I had to guess, I'm sure some sort of drama will become of this at some point. Watch it be Sophie that finds out. She like, because she's like eavesdropping on her sister, right? That's how she finds out. She tells Kyle, and uh, watch that happen. That'd be hilarious. But yeah, that's an interesting kind of wrinkle, and I don't know if they've thought about that or realized that yet. But that could be something that leads to trouble, especially Lucy and Kyle. With them being out of the loop here, especially with everybody that's close to them knowing, and they don't.
Oh, you can see it now already with Kyle. It's like y'all knew. Y'all
Hmm.
knew? Like, so yeah, I agree with you. And also, like I said, I think that the pitfall that a lot of those Arrowverse shows fell into, everybody knowing, everyone being part of the team.
Yeah.
I like the secret identity. I will say, I got a little nervous deep in the season when the Kent family started talking about the secret and why they keep it and all of that. And
Hmm.
I was a little nervous, especially this has now changed in the comics, which we're actually going
Yeah,
to talk about in our next episode. But at the time, right, Clark had revealed his identity to the
the
world,
world.
and
Yeah. Hmm.
I was getting a little nervous that the show was going to follow. So I didn't really think they would, but there was a
I
moment where I
kind
was
of
like,
thought
"Uh oh,
I thought that too. I was just like, this just happened in the comics. So and we are doing a more modern and newer take, and so I could see it. I thought that's where we were going to go. I legit thought that. I thought he was going to hold a press conference, uh, and because he's held several, he's done several interviews. I thought that's what was going to happen.
yes." I was nervous at the end of the first season when he spoke to the world on
Mm,
camera. I was a little nervous then. I was a little nervous here. I'm glad that they didn't go there. I think Lana, that made perfect sense. I was surprised with Beppo. I was surprised, but it tracked in terms of all of that tension that had been mounting between her and
she
Lois over the
she
course of the
had to know.
season.
Like at this point, like she had to know, or else like she was going to be a villain.
I love Beppo. Oh, side note, as I'm watching this, and this might sound like the most obvious thing in the world, but I'm saying to myself, were it not for Allison Mack's real world journey, this
This was
almost
total.
certainly would have been Chloe Sullivan.
This would have 100% have been Chloe Sullivan. Whether it had been Allison Mack playing her or not, this would have been Chloe Sullivan if she was not in trouble.
Yeah.
Like I would place a large bet on that.
Yeah. No, I know. Again, probably the most obvious thing. It took me two, but as I was sitting there, I was like, oh, yeah. I like Beppo. One thing with Beppo that it was a little bit of a head scratch. Maybe I'll go through my quick quibbles with the season right now.
Okay.
When Lois, Clark is gone for a month, and Lois's cover story is, he was working on an assignment, and word gets back to Chrissy, and she's like, what are you talking about? And Lois is like, oh, well, he wants to work here at the Gazette. And we see there's a later scene where Chrissy is scrolling through Clark's like LinkedIn page, right?
Hmm.
And it only says like Daily Planet and Smallville paper.
Yeah.
And, there's a moment where she's like, Clark, I don't know. She says to Lois, basically, like, I don't know that he has the experience, right? And it's like, for the Daily Planet. I mean, what
Yeah.
do you want?
Yeah. It's that, and it's and also it's like when she's like on assignment, she's like, isn't he just a farmer now? Like
I know. There's that. There's that. Okay. Other quibbles, nitpicks, whatever you want to call it. Uh, Not to get too scientific about this, but Clark's on Bizarro World. It's a red sun,
mhm,
right? And he does make note that his powers are diminished there.
mhm.
Yet he's still flying around. He still has his powers.
Yeah.
When Anderson attacks him at the DOD with those red solar lamps, the
Hmm.
second he flips those on, Clark's down on the ground.
Yeah.
How do we reconcile this?
I don't know, because a lamp is not stronger than a sun in the sky. That's for sure.
I mean, not to nitpick, but I'm watching this, and it's just this is something that does kind of bug me with the red lamps. This is not the first time we've seen them. I don't understand why, and I know it's, I guess, for dramatic effect, but like, I don't understand why it would seemingly cause pain or cause him to fall. It's like I
I don't
feel
know.
like it's a little bit much.
It's like it's something he shouldn't notice, right? Like especially like the first few times that it happens, it should be something like it should be something that like he notices after the fact. I think it's not like kryptonite where like it's like where it's he's feeling pain. Like when like you don't have power, you just don't have power, right? Like I wake up every day, I don't have power, so like so it's just like it just kind of is what it is. So yeah, it's just like it's he tries to do something super and can't. That's when he's just like, oh well, crap.
Yes. This isn't a quibble. This was I was frustrated for Clark, and I
Mhm.
enjoyed it, but I was frustrated for Clark. This tension with him and Anderson, and Clark's imprisonment, midway
Yeah.
through the season or so, and it was a great device to put Clark and Talro together, and
Yes.
I love that redemption arc and how that relationship developed. But
I'm a fan of Uncle Tao.
me too. Gave him those
I'm a fan of
trucks
Uncle
at the
Tao.
end of the season.
That's again another Smallville callback, but yeah, that was pretty cool. Got them both before he jetted off to to go find himself a wife. I think that's pretty funny too.
I know once he heard from Bizarro Clark that his doppelganger had a wife, that's like he couldn't shake that idea. He's like,
Yeah, he
what?
couldn't. He's like, oh, I want to get married, yo.
I, you know, I I really do like Tal's redemption arc, and I think it shows, a lot of talk in the season about how, what Superman really does, right? It's
Mhm.
not about the powers; it's his ability to inspire
Yeah.
and to give hope, and that's as he has that potential goodbye with the boys at the end before he goes into the sun. Another
Mhm.
Smallville reference. I want to talk about
Yeah.
that. That's
And an All-Star
that's
Superman reference too.
yes, yes. And that's what he says to them. Like his potentially his parting words are don't lose hope, right?
Mhm.
And so I think as easy as it would be to write off someone like Talro after what he did. And look, Clark's not necessarily warm to him at the outset.
No.
It takes a good bit, rightfully so, but he doesn't fully write him off, and you see that develop, and you see that. And I think the first season did a really nice job with Talro when you got his backstory and you
Mhm.
saw how he was just twisted up by that slug of a father that he had.
Yeah.
And so with the right influences, with the possibility of genuine family and love, you see
Mhm.
the difference that it can have in him. So that was such an unexpected surprise this season.
Yeah.
I thought was how all of that played out. I thought that was
Oh, yeah.
wonderful.
He was like, borrowing from my show. He was a role player of the year.
Yeah, yeah,
That was
no,
him.
absolutely. That was great. But other quibbles. What did I want to bring up? Oh yeah. So when Mayor Lang is addressing the town hall meeting, right,
Mhm.
at the end of the season, this is the point where Allie Alston is trying to merge the two worlds, and we have their Earth's sun in the sky, the red
Yeah.
sun, and nobody knows what's going on. The DoD's put out a cover story, but Lana wants to try to give some genuine information and help help the town, and no one will believe what she's telling them in this
Mhm.
town hall meeting until Superman shows up, a depowered Superman at this point in the
Yeah.
story, and backs up what Lana's telling them. And maybe a little nitpicky, we've certainly seen instances in the real world in recent history where people are slow to accept evidence that's presented to them.
Yes.
However, there's a red sun in the sky, and
I know.
they live in a
I know.
world with Superman. They lived through the whole Tauro incident the year
That's true.
before. I just don't understand why, like, virtually everyone in that room was just like so incredulous. It was a
I
little
don't
over the
know.
top,
A little bit. Yeah. A little bit.
you
That
know.
was more. That was more like function over realism, I guess, or
Yeah.
logic. Function over logic.
Yes. No, it was fine. I did have to say I loved, of course, one of the instigators was the former mayor, Dean,
Yeah.
George Dean, and I loved when Superman was there and backing up Lana, and he's like, "I know Lana's here for people, not her own interest." And he looks at
Hmm.
Dean. Great. Love
It was
that.
so good.
So good. There's so many, yes, so many great moments. Uh, yeah, let's circle back to Clark losing his powers, because I think at this point now we've seen enough instances where Superman should just know if he's ever fully depowered, you just got to
Hmm.
throw him in the sun. You just
Yeah.
got to throw him in the sun. Clearly, that's that's always the
Clearly.
way.
Clearly. But yeah, that was pretty cool too to see that, and especially like the ending in that finale. That was just so cool. I just like that. It's like, yeah, this is what we want to see. This is what we want to see.
Yeah. Oh, that was. I mean, that was so tremendous. But yes, of course, that made me think of the season 8 premiere of Smallville, where Clark had lost his
Hmm.
powers and had been hit by an arrow and was dying, and Martian Manhunter flies him into the sun, and that restores his powers. We got to see a lot more of it on Superman and Lois. It didn't
Yes,
largely happen off screen.
off screen. Yeah,
Still not sure though. I don't mean to
how
have
he
these
how he
grudge.
survived the trip to the
Yeah,
sun,
and was able
depowered. Yeah,
to speak in space as well.
yeah. I mean, I
Yeah.
guess like those power reserves didn't go all the way down to zero, right? So I guess there was something in there, something in that Kryptonian physiology that allowed him to at least make the trip.
I guess. I mean, I don't know. Earlier in that episode, he couldn't even walk up the stairs though. So I
Yeah, I
feel
know,
like
right?
that was pushing it a little bit. Maybe, though this is never said, this is total headcanon, but maybe Tao was able to extend his aura, his bioelectric aura,
Maybe
enough to protect and create a little oxygen
force
for them to
field.
converse. Yeah.
Maybe. I mean, it'd be cool to see. It'd be cool to see like Superman with an aura, like a la like anime, right? Like when these dudes power up, and like that's essentially what's going on. That'd be cool to see Superman do that.
Yeah. But it's do you watch Always Sunny?
Yeah, off and on. Yeah,
But one of my favorite, I think, an iconic Frank line is when he's like, when I die, just throw me in the trash.
yeah.
And that's what I think it's like for Superman. Like this, it's just like when I lose my powers, just
Throw
throw
me
me
in
in
the
the
sun.
sun.
Yeah,
Just throw me in the sun. I'll be fine.
classic Frank.
But it's classic Frank. But it is. I agree with you, man. That whole sequence, the whole climax of that season finale when he emerges from the sun, just
Yeah.
supercharged
Hmm.
and overloads Allie and separates her. We get
Yeah.
the Superman the movie callback where he's flying around the Earth and building
Uh-huh.
up all that speed and lands and just like breaks the planets apart.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
It's good stuff. That's
It
really good
really is a
stuff.
fantastic sequence. Did it? And
It
I'm
really
assuming
is.
so that gave you All Star Superman vibes.
It did for 100%. Um, uh, it's funny, like that book when it first came out, I was like, "Yeah, this is all right. I think this is pretty overrated." Like people talk about this is like this is the greatest thing ever. I was like, "Yeah, I'm not really feeling it." I read it a second time later in life, and I was like, "Yo, this is dope." This I was like, this is it. This is way better. I don't know what I like. I don't know. Maybe I was just not in the right mindset, or I was not at the right stage of life, or something to really get what that book was saying. It was like, oh yeah, this is it. Still not my favorite though, but it's a great one.
You and I had a very similar, almost identical experiences with it. I just put out a 2.5 hour episode that was all
Hmm.
about how I really learned to love All Star Superman. Say like
Yeah,
exact same experience, and you definitely got those vibes from this. It doesn't at all seem like that's where season three is heading, but
no,
part of me, especially as I was rewatching the finale, I was like, ooh, that could be an interesting, unintended consequence of getting supercharged in the sun. We get sort of an all star esque
hmm
story because not to rehash that episode, but we talked about the animated adaptation, and
yeah,
that's another thing, a la Death of Superman, where we get these movie takes on these stories, and they're fine, but I
they
think
need time to breathe.
they need time to breathe. They need that episodic form. Like All Star in particular is like would lend itself beautifully. It's all about his 12 labors. I mean, it
Yeah,
would fit so neatly
exactly. Yeah,
into our 15 episode season here.
he's so
So
good.
especially if this ends up being the final season, like if they did sort of a take on All Star,
Hmm.
I would like that. At the same time, it was such a moment of triumph when he emerged from the sun, and you
Yeah,
just see him like the solar radiation is like pouring out of him. It would make me feel bad if and it's like, oh hey, you're
yeah,
dying from this. So
yeah.
we could maybe kind of leave
But
that.
that's the tragic irony, though, right? That's part of the whole thing, and you just got to kind of fix it. I and the cool thing would be like if he kind of figures it stuff out, like when he leaves and he comes back, like but he comes back, but it's like later on in life or something like that. Like when he comes back, the boys are older, Lois is older, or something like that. That would be like an interesting ending. Like if you just see him like land and they come out, they're older, and like we get another reunion shot. I think that would be really cool.
Yeah, I know something. Yeah, I think there's some potential there. Again,
I
I have
think so too.
no idea where they're going, but yeah, I couldn't help but have those All Star vibes, and again, especially having just reread and just rewatched All Star when he lands on Main Street in Smallville after he saved the day and everyone's cheering
Hmm.
for him. It's like he has shown them the face of the man of tomorrow. It's like
Yep.
it's oh man, it's as far as moments this season. I think I mean that's so far that's so high up the list. I also have to say I know as much as I loved Cal and Tal becoming buddies over the course of the season, when they go to the fortress early in the season, and
Hmm.
Tal breaks free and is attacking Jordan, and
Yeah.
then Clark has to step in, and he's like, "Don't you ever touch my son!"
Hmm.
Ah, love that moment too. That
Exactly.
anger,
Yeah.
sparingly, but every now and then, man, it's effective.
Yeah. Speaking of, we talk about the kids.
Yes,
they're
yes, yes. Well,
they're
who shall we start with?
ah. We got to talk about Jordan, right? Like
Yeah,
he's training. He knows how to do stuff, and like now, granted, he's not a pro at it, but I like how he's learning and he kind of does stuff in spurts. Like it's cool, and like when he takes his first flight to kind of do stuff, it's like yeah, Jordan, like you're legit rooting for him. And, like to see him kind of get involved in stuff. And I love his excitement when he's talking to his brother about it, and like how, and throughout it all, I love how Jonathan is 100% supportive of his brother. He's not jealous. And like when he gets and when he takes XK, it's not to keep up with his brother or anything, or it's not because he's jealous of his brother. He's doing it because he, as he explains to Clark, he feels like he doesn't have a place because like because things have taken a pretty much a dramatic turn for him, and so that's kind of what he did it for. But not to, he's not trying to upstage Jordan. He's not jealous that Jordan has powers. He kind of doesn't care. He thinks it's cool that Jordan has powers, but it's not his. It's not a like, oh man, he does has powers and I don't. Like it's not that at all. He's just like, that's cool. I want to do my own thing, but he's still trying to figure out what his thing is.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I love that dynamic between them, the support. And then the flip of that, when Jordan thinks that Jonathan is getting powers, his excitement over the fact that now
Yeah,
this is the fraternals, like this is
the
something that they
fraternals.
can share. Yeah, I like that a lot. Yeah, I mean Jordan, I guess I was surprised at how much his powers developed. You know, he's
Mhm.
flying by the end of the season, but
He was.
you know, it's great. And again, you know, seeing him, with the hood and going into action, and very Smallville esque, right, where it's putting a strain on the
Hmm.
relationship with Sarah. Like he can't tell her. His timing's not great. You know, there are a number
No.
of instances where the situation is like real dire, and he's trying to talk to Lana or Sarah or
Yeah.
Lois about this. It's like, buddy, you gotta pick your
You got to
moments
read the
here.
room.
Read the room, yeah.
But again, like I don't know how much time you spend with kids his age, but that's pretty on brand. Like they have no concept of time, score, like what's going on. They're thinking about what they're thinking about and not seeing the big picture. So that's very on brand for for young people, especially sophomores in high school. And I say that with the experience of seeing them every day for the past 15 years. So
No, I hear you. I hear you totally. Oh, I probably my favorite Jordan moment. I do love when he's training with Clark and they're flying and they're
mhm,
so excited and they're jumping up and down. Like that's all great. But I think my favorite moment is when he's fighting Bizarro John.
yeah,
By the way, again, as far as the writers loving the Triangle era, getting John in that Superboy, that Connor Kent
uh-huh,
Superboy, love that. So excited. I remember seeing there were like on set photos that people had posted leading up to that,
yeah,
and I was like, huh? Like that was really cool. But when they're fighting on our Earth on the Kent farm, and Jordan, it looks like Jordan's just taking a beating, and then it's like you realize he's letting John expend his energy and bask in that yellow sunlight that's weakening
hmm,
him, and then Jordan just knocks him out. I'm like, yeah, buddy,
yeah, good
that
stuff.
was really good. Yeah.
It's good
Ugh.
stuff.
As a Rocky
Um,
fan, it's like really like that.
yeah,
Just let yourself get beaten up for a while.
it's the rope a dope.
Rope a dope.
The rope a dope. I love it. Yeah, and then of course the irons, right? You know, Natalie is somebody that I thought I would be annoyed with pretty quickly, but I wasn't. And I like her presence on the show. I like how she's kind of there's like she's basically their sister. Like that's kind of how they kind of like have her with the group. I like her relationship with John. I wish there was more of John on the show. Um, I'm glad she has her armor. I was like, hey, you got some arc light coming. Let's go.
Yeah, I love Steel is one of my favorite characters. I always feel like more should be done with Steel. So the fact that he's been a presence on the show, I couldn't be happier. Again, I
Steel hasn't
guess
gotten like a feature since what 52. Like that was the last time he was really like kind of featured in something. Was that? And then before that, it was Shaq.
yeah. I I believe that the DC is putting out a new Steelworks either ongoing or limited series, I believe.
Okay,
So I think there's something coming. I have to double check. I'm sure the audience knows, but
yeah. There's a lot of super stuff coming this year. So
yes, which is good. Good.
mhm.
So with John Henry, and I guess with contracts, he's not in every episode, so he gets sidelined
Yeah, I know, right?
for a little chunk there in the season. But I loved all the John and Natalie. I love that dynamic. John Henry had some badass moments as he always
Yeah,
does. I mean, at the mines, especially when he jumps and the suit forms
that,
around him.
so good. So good. Like, you know what? And the thing is, like, you got to thank, you have to, that's one of those things you got to tip your cap and thank Marvel for. Because if it wasn't for Iron Man, like, number one, we wouldn't have that. And number two, audience wouldn't be able to digest that as easily. Like, because of Iron Man, we can see there's like, oh yeah, that makes, we can look at that and go, that makes sense when it's completely nonsensical.
Yes. Oh, and when he catches the hammer
Yeah.
barehanded to save Clark from Bizarro on the
Hmm.
farm, great moment. I just, to see these moments of heroism. He doesn't have the power. He has the know-how. He has the
Yeah.
tools, right? But he really puts himself out there. I love it. It's terrific. And that father-daughter dynamic. I think Nat was kind of my MVP for this season,
Yeah.
especially as we get towards the end. And she, like you said, she built her own suit. And when she shows up at the high school and she saves, Clark and Jordan from Bizarro,
Hmm.
Lana and John, like it was such a great scene. When she throws the hammer at Lana,
Yeah.
Bizarro Lana, she dodges and Jordan catches it and bashes her. Ah,
That's still good.
it's such a great scene. Oh, this is what I wanted to say about the kids in particular. I thought that with actually all of them, with Nat, with John, with Jordan, the show struck a nice balance between. I feel like both perspectives that we got from the parents and the kids were valid and tracked, and you saw where they were coming from.
Hmm.
Nat and John, for example, it's like she has been with him from day one. She helped him build his suit. They've been through so much together. She wants to help, and she
Hmm.
can help. She proves that. But he's still her father, right? And so it's like,
Yep.
of course he doesn't want to put her in any situation where she's going to be in danger. And so it just felt, it felt very, very believable. And then even, to your point too, like with John and the XK and all of that stuff, it's like you totally understand Clark and Lois's shock and disappointment and anger that he did
Hmm.
this, but you do also see where he was coming from with this and the
Yes.
follies of youth. So I really appreciated how you could see it from both sides. I thought that really resonated.
No, I agree. And also it's refreshing that this is happening on the CW because so many of their shows feature kids and people that the kid kids that age being completely independent and their parents nowhere in the picture, and oftentimes these kids like emancipated minors. That was the first time I ever heard of that term, was like watching these shows. It's like, are you what? And so like these kids are just kind of operating on their own, just like all willy-nilly and stuff. But like this show, it's like it's more real world. It's like you have parents and they're telling you no, and then there's nothing you can do about it because that's because that is what it is. That's what life is. Like when you're that young and like your parent says no, that's the end of the story. Like that just is what it is.
I know it's like when Jordan says to Sarah, like, I want to tell you things, but I can't. It's like his parents
Mhm.
told him not to, you
Yeah,
know?
exactly. And it's different. Like especially like when your parents tell you not to, that's one thing. But like when your parent is Superman, that's another thing. It's just like, yeah, like I'm I'm not stepping out of bounds.
I have to say, early in the season when Clark is experiencing visions, right? He turns out, of course, to
Hmm.
be a result of Bizarro, but he's having these visions and he's feeling those emotions, and it's manifesting in these fits of rage,
Yeah.
right? And it's coming out when he's disciplining the boys. And again, like as a parent, like that's something that like I can, to you don't want to show that side, right? Like you don't
Yeah.
want to let something like that out. And even though there were extenuating circumstances there, it was definitely something he had to acknowledge and work through with the boys. And it
Hmm.
just, again, yes, we're in this heightened scenario here, but it felt very real, and I really liked the way that played out.
Yeah. Yeah. Because that's I mean, like I'm not a parent, but like I'm a teacher, and so yeah, sometimes the kids make you mad. Like that's just is what it is.
Yeah,
Sometimes it's part of. Sometimes it's just what happens.
yeah, it can definitely be frustrating sometimes. John with the XK again. You like you said, I think we understand where he's coming from with this. What's your take on the girlfriend, Candace?
Well, she's different from the one that he had in season one that was
Yeah.
from Central City, and so that was the first thing I was like, "Well, what happened to her?" Like, I was looking forward to seeing Grant Gustin show up on this show, but I guess at that point they got the one of the many letters that they got saying like, "Nah, this is not going to happen."
Oh, I still
Uh,
want to talk about that. We still have
mm,
that.
yeah, so yeah, and the thing is like we don't know all that much about her except for the reveal that like her family's on hard times, that's why they're selling it. But we don't really know her like we know the other girl. right? Because like that other girl was kind of built up. She was kind of this mysterious person. And then, we saw, John kind of fall for her. Sarah was like, hey, I don't like that girl. And it's like, and then now she's gone. Like there's no follow up on that.
That reminded me of Friday Night Lights. There were drop storylines and dropped characters on Friday Night Lights, and that gave me the vibes there.
Like Waverly or
Yeah,
that other girl that Smash dated, Carlotta, who else? That rodeo guy that Tyra was dating. Um, yeah, like there's a lot of those.
yeah. So look, I assume this was an actor. I mean, maybe it was a creative choice. I assume it was more of an actor availability sort of thing. I don't
Mhm.
know, but because that's the thing, you watch season one, especially get to the end, and Tegan was the character, I
Yeah,
believe, and it's like, yeah, they were building that up. You were getting her backstory, right? Her dad had been in trouble, Central City, so it would have lent itself very naturally, I think, to
mhm.
this, selling XK storyline here. So I don't know. So yeah, we're just thrust into, he has a new girlfriend, right? We don't get any of the backstory there. I don't know, man. Like this girl was bad news. I did not like her. I felt like she, and I, like this is what it was kind of tough to sort this out, because I feel like as the season went on, I think they tried to make her more sympathetic. Like I don't know if there were deleted scenes in earlier episodes or
Yeah.
what that involved her, but it just kind of felt like she struck me as a bit more of a schemer initially,
Hmm.
the way she's like because the thing is, in the beginning part of the season, John's noticing that Timmy, the quarterback on the team,
Yeah,
right?
his teammates are doing it.
Right. And he can't, John can't keep up. And, Candace is the one who like mentions like, oh, well, I saw him doing this drug at the party. And it's like, she's dropping these seeds. She's the one who,
Hmm.
I mean, I know he goes to her initially to say, I want you to sell to me, but, she definitely encourages him, right? He has a great game after he takes it. I don't know. I just felt like my take on her wasn't necessarily a positive one. I feel like as the season went on, you got more of her backstory. I think they tried to engender more sympathy to her, but I think it was a little bit too late for me at that point. So I don't know. I
Yeah,
felt like that needed to come earlier. That didn't totally work for me.
yeah. It was odd just because she felt out of place.
I also don't understand how these brilliant investigative minds, Lois in particular, cannot figure out who John is protecting, right? Because he holds the inhalers for Candace when the drug sniffing dogs show up at school, and he takes the fall, and he will not tell his parents who he is protecting. And like no one can figure it out
Yeah,
until he eventually brings her forward. I guess you just got to roll with it.
I guess. It's like nobody dusted for fingerprints. Like,
I, oh, I love too when one of the scenes where Clark and Lois, they still have to talk to the boys, and John in particular, about this, and they play rock paper scissors to decide
that
who's
was
who's
good.
going to go talk to them. That was great. Like little. That's the thing. I know we're talking about a lot of the the big aspects of the season, but little things like Jordan wearing too much cologne and Clark telling him like, "That's real strong, bud, real strong.
Uh huh.
We gotta lower the window." Little things like
That's
that.
another that's also so true. It's not even funny.
Yeah, I
Like,
don't envy you being in a confined space.
man, some of these boys, man, like they overdo it with the axe, man. Like,
The
it's a bit
axe.
much.
Oh, it's been a long time. That takes me back.
Uh, this is my Monday through Friday, man.
So one of the biggest things that we've alluded to, but we've not discussed yet, is after 2 seasons of not knowing what this show's place was in the larger Arrowverse,
Hmm.
and the producer sort of telling us one thing and seemingly planting seeds that led to one conclusion. We get
Yeah.
confirmation in the finale through a speech that Sam Lane gives about how he's
Hmm.
seen glimpses of other worlds with leagues of superheroes. Our world only has your father, but he's the finest of any world. So I think some of the chatter online was, oh, it's not in the Arrowverse. I mean, not to split hairs, but it's in the Arrowverse. It's just not on the Earth of
Yeah.
Arrow and Flash and so on, right?
Correct. But yet they have John Diggle.
They have a John Diggle, yeah.
They have a John Diggle who knows an Oliver Queen that he's mentioned several times before.
Yeah.
And they seem to know him because they met him in Crisis. It's so weird. I don't know. But I guess on this Earth and any other Earth, Diggle is not allowed to be Green Lantern, even though that was the promise of his premise, and it was been broken.
Look, bring us full circle, right? Like this idea of going all in and not
Yeah,
holding back. It's like, I mean, I look, I don't know behind the scenes politics if this is that they, were saving this for that HBO show that who knows if that'll ever happen or like, I mean, I don't know, but it's just like, why are you why are you teasing this for years?
because, basically because of the just awful running of the business side of things and the creative side of things in a lot of ways by the people at Warner Brothers DC, like and Discovery. Like that's what it is. Like they mishandle so much of this stuff. It's amazing that we get the quality that we do get, when there's a whole bunch that's not, and there's some stuff that's upcoming that's also not, and there's some stuff that's upcoming that I'm not excited for. Um, it's a wonder that some of the stuff that they do that is good because like they just I could not be any more, um, I guess, what's the word I'm looking for? Uh, Unconfident in their ability to make good on stuff than I am at the moment because it's like it's so frustrating and disappointing as a guy who, if I had to go into the nerd Hall of Fame, the hat I would wear would be a DC hat, but they make it hard.
Yo, has not been easy. It has not
Yeah,
been easy being a fan of these characters, for
yeah,
sure.
because they put us through too much, man. It's like, and when it's seemingly it's so much easier in other places, it's just like, dang it, like why? Like why is it so easy for like Invincible came out last year, right? It's like, why is this so easy for? Why was this so easy? Like The Boys has a lot of success. Why is this so easy? You look at Marvel's success. It's like you don't really need to talk about it. It's obvious. It's like, why is this so easy? Like why and it's like, why are you guys so bad at this? Like it makes no sense.
Absolutely. I've said this before, but it's like whenever Kevin Feige has one of his presentations, right? And he puts up
Yeah,
that PowerPoint with like all these projects that are coming out, this
yeah,
unified universe across film and TV, all these projects years into the future, utilizing the most obscure characters. It's like, what? How is it that we're like starving for a Superman movie? It's
yeah, exactly. And the thing is, like some of that stuff I'm like cool with, and other parts I'm just like, all right. I mean, I'm gonna see it because you have like your track record speaks, like it has garnered my attention and garnered my confidence. But like if the roles were reversed, right, and DC was on top of the world, and we had all the stuff that Marvel has. We had our own theme park at some place, all the merch, all the love, all everything. Right? I'd be so obnoxious. This is probably best. It's probably best that we don't have all this because I would be so obnoxious about it. I'd be like I am about like. How I am about the Astros, and I'm pretty sure there's a lot of people who are tired of hearing me talk about the two-time World Series champs. But that being said, it's probably for the best, because I would be like the people that we don't like on the internet who are like rubbing it in people's faces about like how good they have it. But that doesn't mean that I don't want it.
No, I hear you. So, I mean, as far as this reveal, like we get this confirmation in the season 2 finale. It's not on the
Yeah,
same Earth. What's your reaction as you're watching that? And has it changed in the time since?
initially it was disappointment because we know where they came from, right? We know where Tyler Hoechlin debuted as Superman. He debuted as Superman in the Arrowverse, and Lois debuted in the Arrowverse, and so and everything was pointing to like that. This is there's a possible connection. There's ways that they could have done it and revealed it, but at the same time. It's probably for the best that this is separate, especially considering that the Arrowverse at the point at the when this show debuted, the Arrowverse was beginning its end. Right, they started to slow up and go to its end because when this show started, Supergirl was about to end. Um, Flash was kind of limping towards its now final season. Black Lightning was going to end. Legends was on its last season, so like everything was, and Arrow was already over, and so the Arrowverse as a whole was starting to feel the effects and the absence of Arrow because Arrow really like it is the show that started it all, but it's also the one that held everything together. It was the grounding agent for everything else. And so, and it was something that I noticed after Arrow ended, like watching the other shows, you could tell something was missing.
Gotcha. No, that all makes sense. I'll be honest. I was when we got that scene, I was relieved. I was
Hmm.
happy. I was honestly I was hoping for this because I had soured on the Arrowverse.
Mm.
As much as I had again had, and that's the thing. I feel like a lot of times when it comes up on this podcast, I sort of I don't necessarily speak of it in the most glowing of terms, but it's like I really enjoyed it for a really long time,
Hmm.
really through Crisis. I mean, leading up to it, it was a little shaky, but uh, Crisis I thought was a terrific achievement. But I was at the point where, like you said, a lot of stuff was wrapping up anyway, and my interest in the remaining shows had really,
Hmm.
you know, declined, to put it mildly. Like I wasn't watching the other shows,
Yeah.
and I just sort of felt like Superman and Lois was doing something different and special, right? And we've talked about that. Again, I think the you know the way it's shot, the stories that they're telling, the focus on the family and the community. It's just it's different, and I just wanted it to remain its own thing, and I didn't feel like crossovers would necessarily benefit it.
Hmm.
I feel like it would take away. So the idea that it would be on its own made total sense. Also, we're at the point now, especially in season two, and we get the same actress playing Lucy Lane, but like a totally different version of the character.
Yeah.
We have a different Sam. Like there were enough instances now where things were different, and you can chalk a lot up to Crisis, but at a certain
Hmm.
point, it's kind of pushing it a little bit. And finally, though I don't see this happening, I guess with the exception of David Ramsey as Diggle, there's nothing necessarily to preclude them from bringing an actor back, right?
Yeah.
As that Earth's version of that character. If Melissa Benoist was like, "Hey, I would love to do this again," I don't really see that happening. But it's like if
Hmm.
she did, it's like they could.
They
So,
could.
so I was okay with that. I didn't. I understand for people who like everything connected, and it felt like a disappointment. And we definitely were jerked around. I mean, it definitely was headed in one direction, and then they
Hmm.
pivoted. But I was just kind of happy that this could be its own thing.
Yeah. No, and I see that. And again, like I was momentarily disappointed, but I'm not like saddened that it's its own thing. I mean, I do like that it's its own thing. In my head canon, it's connected, but at the same time, it's also kind of connected the same way that Supergirl was in season one. Different Earth, but same universe. It's fine.
Right.
We
Yeah.
understand that concept.
Yeah. No. Absolutely. So, oh, real quick, and I want to talk just as we close out here, sort of hopes for season three, but a minor thing, but I was happy to have, as far as the Kryptonian parent offering guidance, I was happy to have Laura this season instead of Jor-El. No, no
Same.
disrespect to that actor, but that was probably one of the weakest Jor-Els we've ever seen.
Yeah, there's that, but also just the fact that like Laura is just such an afterthought. Like when we think about the, in like how she's been done in the history of Superman, she's such an afterthought. We hear all this stuff about Jor-El, but it's just like, well, like there's always that joke. Like I think it was Family Guy that did it, or somebody did a joke where it's like Jor-El is like uploading his consciousness and all this stuff into the thing, so he can. And Laura's like, well, don't I get one? And it's like, well, yeah, buddy. Like, why didn't you both like have a role in this? So I'm glad that like she got a showcase in this.
I think it also thematically it really ties in with the show where same type of thing, right? When you look at the Kents, it's often the wisdom of Jonathan Kent that we're shown more than anything else. In this show, right,
Hmm.
it begins with the passing of Martha, and
Yeah.
as much as Jonathan has been referenced, we get the flashbacks with Martha. It's certainly at the outset it was more about Martha and that influence. So
Yeah.
I like the parallel now of spending more time with Laura.
I
I
do
think
too.
it's perfect for this show. I love the note that we end on with the creation of this new fortress out in
Yeah.
the ocean, and that it's going to be for all of them. He throws John a bone. He's like, "Look, there's a lot of great Kryptonian tech that
Hmm.
you can play around with." So as we head into season three, again, what do we know? We know Chad Coleman, right, who played Tobias Church, of course, Walking Dead and Always Sunny.
Hmm.
He's on allegedly to play Bruno Mannheim. We'll see
Yeah.
who he's actually playing.
He actually is.
We'll see who he actually is. We know we're getting a new actor playing John.
Yes.
Let me ask you this. Do you want them to acknowledge it in any way? Do you want them to be like, "Oh, John's been at the fortress for weeks," like, and he comes back like, "Oh, it's like a different person," or do you just want them to,
I mean, I
leave
kind
it?
of expect them to do something like that, just to break the ice, like kind of like Don Cheadle in Iron Man 2 is like, look, it's me, I'm here, let's deal with it, move on, right? Like perfect. Like that's all kind of needs to be said. Um, Recasting is weird, but it happens. I'm not exactly sure what his reasons are. He said it was personal. So I do like though that I did get to meet the OG fraternals the summer after season 2 finished at a con in Dallas, and I met Tyler and Bitsy as well. So like, and then the funny thing is like a couple months later is when that news came out that he was leaving the show. It's like, oh man, well I'm glad I got to meet the OG cast. But season 3. What I'm looking forward to seeing what they're going with Tobias with our guy Tobias, that's for sure. And also we had some news, this week as of this recording. Lex Luthor is going to be here, so yeah, we finally have a Lex in this universe. Superman needs a Lex, and if this is going to be the last season, you got to go Lex.
Yeah, and Michael Cudlitz. I mean, I like this casting. I loved him on Walking Dead. I never watched Southland, but I always wanted to, which I know he was on with Ben McKenzie.
Yeah. Well, the funny thing is, like, I don't know him from anything. Like I know that he's one of those people who's like, oh, he's an actor. I know he does stuff, but he's not in. Like, I've not watched the stuff that he's in, which I think is interesting. So, wouldn't have been my pick, but we'll see how he does.
Yeah, I know. I know that was very recent news. I know the timing of this was perfect. I was like, all right, great, right before we record. Yeah, no, I agree. I'm happy to see the show put a spin on Lex again, especially if this ends up being the final season. We do have a trailer, and there's this imagery of Lois standing in front of the Daily Planet as the building's crumbling and the globe is falling, and fans online put it side by side with the cover to Action Comics 700, part of the Fall of Metropolis story. Yeah. And I don't know if they'll do something like that. Again, look, as much as I was talking about how the bait and switch can get a little tiresome maybe at times, to their credit, it's like you never know exactly what they're going to do. And even when you see something that looks like such a clear reference, it's like, oh, they're doing that. It's like, you don't know. So you know what? I tip my hat to them.
Yeah, for sure. It keeps you watching, and then that's the goal, right? Is to keep you watching.
Yeah. Do you have any other hopes or wishes for the season? Anything, especially if this ends up being the final thing? Is there anything like they haven't done yet? They're like, before they go, I really hope that they do this.
Throw like a couple of supervillains, right? Like for him to have like either a couple episode arc with, or like see him deal with them like before doing something else, right? And like I could see, I don't know, like Metallo could be done. Like that's somebody that you can use. A live wire. That's TV shows, especially genre stuff, like using stuff with electricity. It seems to be easy to do. I think they figured out the finances, like how to do that financially. So I think that's something that could work. Or even like a Toy Man, like even if you have to do like a Smallville type of version of it or something like that. Like you could be creative like with toys and stuff like that. I think seeing some Superman villains would be cool. Like some of those, like just a little bit of him dealing with a little bit of rogues, right? That'd be cool. And then like flashbacks to him and Lois when they were at the planet, like, because that episode where they did that is so cool, and the fact that he's wearing the Fleischer suit, it's just like that's something I never thought I'd see in live action, and it looks amazing. So more of that, even if it's one more episode, just one.
Well, usually again around episode 10 or so, like in the first season, they gave us that whole flashback, and then season 2 was the Bizarro episode. So they, around that point in the season, they give us something special. So maybe we'll get something. I would be happy with any of the things you laid out. I agree about sort of pulling in more rogues, whether they're, a big bad of the season or just someone he deals with quickly at the top of an episode. It's like, it could be something kind of quicker, but you get to see the character. I mean, look, I've said so many times on this podcast, I love the Conduit character, Kenny Braverman, right? This former classmate who has this grudge against Clark and learns that he's Superman. It's mind-boggling to me that Smallville never did a version of this, so I feel like this would lend itself well to Superman and Lois. I would be happy with that. I don't think anyone will ever listen to my wishes for Conduit, but that would be cool. I believe this season Clark and Lois are going to be working together at the Smallville Gazette.
Okay.
So I like that, and it would be great to see Clark in town more. and
Yeah.
interacting with more people. And I guess now we'll get that with him and Chrissy and stuff like that. But it would be cool,
Mhm.
like when he sets John Henry up with that new place and the
Yeah.
new shop. He's like, oh, like a friend of mine is renting this place. Like, who's a friend? It's like, I
Yeah.
would love to see more of his life
Kenny.
in town. Yeah, it's Kenny. There you go. Oh man, that writes itself. Uh, is there anything we didn't talk about with season 2 that you wanted to?
I think the only thing that we kind of haven't mentioned yet is the Lucy stuff with
Yeah.
Allie. Um, and interesting take that Lucy was the like because she's always the oddball sister, right? And she's always like, and oftentimes I think how her oddballness manifests is different with every incarnation. So sometimes she's the wild child, sometimes she's the degenerate, sometimes she's gotten into a cult, sometimes she's just like in lockstep with her father. Like who knows? Like she's just like she's kind of a blank slate for them to do stuff, but like you get exactly what it is. Like she's very malleable in that way, and so this was a nice way of kind of doing that. It was always great to see Jen Dewan. I have no problem seeing her on screen, so good on them.
Yeah. I know we didn't talk much about that, but maybe that's telling. As far as like what we
Yeah.
really liked or didn't like about this season. Yeah, this whole business about this inverse society, this alleged self-help group / cult that
Hmm.
Allie is leading, and then you get the larger picture. I'm on board with everything you said about Lucy. And getting more of that insight into the Lane family dynamic and everything that they went through after the mom left and everything, and it was interesting. Also, again, and we'll wrap this up because I know we're past an hour and a half now, but just real quick, at the beginning of the season, I did think it was kind of interesting, and it was surprisingly like there was a depth and nuance to this. Lois's reaction to Natalie,
Yeah.
right? Because we have months have passed, and Lois is really closed off, and we're not sure, and um, of course, she knows that Lois Lane was Natalie's mother on that other Earth. But what she articulates to Clark is that she looked at Natalie when Natalie got out of that pod the way that Lois's mother looked at her and Lucy when she left. And she knows what it feels like to be looked at by your mother or who you think is your mother and to not see that love, not see that
Hmm.
connection. And she did that and I just thought, I remember when my wife and I were watching that, and I don't know that my wife was totally sold on that. She's like, "What?" And I was like, "No, I think this works." And I thought it was an interesting angle, and again, was an
Yeah.
opportunity to sort of go in a little bit of a different direction than just the obvious.
Hmm.
So I thought it was cool with the
That means we're
whole.
totally going to see the mom in this last
Oh
season.
yeah,
Then.
we should. I mean, that's as far as wish lists. I mean, I feel like that's something a little bit of business to to maybe put a button on,
Yeah.
something. Uh, Oh, but as far as like the inverse society and all of that, I mean, it's interesting that at first glance, and certainly Lois's take is that Allie's just full of it, right? And then
Hmm.
early on in the season, you realize, oh no, she is actually right in the sense that
Yeah.
like there is actually this other Earth. So that was kind of a fun bit. I don't know. I guess there was something, and I wish I could articulate this better because I don't have. There was just something that was off or missing for me with the Allie character. I don't know. So, we mentioned that is a character from the comics. And at the end of last year, I reread the Greg Rucka run on Adventures of Superman, which introduced this character. There's a villain, Ruin, who basically took these twins, the Alston twins, one of them was Allie, and turned them into parasites. So there were two of them.
Hmm.
A relatively short tenure in the Superman books. And again, in terms of characterization and motive, very different. I mean, really just
Yeah.
got the name here. But so I don't know if I was looking for a more recognizable comics counterpart, if I was looking for something different in the characterization. I don't know what was missing for me, but it was a little, she felt more like a device to me than a
Yeah.
character.
It's a bit of that, and then also the fact that like some of our own projections of what she should be and what she was really after, I think, played a role into that. Because again, we talked off top. Like my first thoughts of her before we got like all the real information and what it actually was like, oh, this is Granny. And so that probably colored some of how I was watching this.
That's fair. In fairness, though, too, I did like that she learned her lesson in the end.
Yeah.
When Lois has that final talk with the two of them who have now been split, and it's like,
Hmm.
did you find what you were like? She's preaching that you'll feel complete when you
Yes.
merge, right? And it's like, did you? And she's like, no, like I felt joy for a moment. It's like, well, that's not the feeling that you were preaching. So
Yeah.
I did like that. That was I think a satisfying enough resolution to that.
Yeah.
Listen, I think we were fairly thorough. I'm sure there are, moments and beats and stories, obviously, that we didn't get through every single thing, but I think we really touched on a lot for this season. I
Yeah,
mean, I enjoyed it a lot, even more upon rewatch. I think this show is tremendous. I mean, I think it's
I do too.
really, one of my favorite takes that we've gotten on the character, and I just hope
Yeah,
we get a strong third season, and if it's the last one, that we can really hold these 3 seasons up and say this is a great, complete story.
yeah, I agree too. And like this is, I mean, I don't want to jinx it, but it's like if they could finish strong with these three, and if this is the end, it's like all right, we're in like Daredevil territory, right? Like,
I know. Yeah, there's something to be said for that.
yeah,
So, of course, always hold on to Arrow, available
hmm
on all major podcast platforms and social media.
sure
What
is.
is there any place in particular you want to direct people, or anything you want to sort of tease or direct them toward?
Yeah, follow us on Twitter. We're at Do Not Fail Our Pod. You know, like you know, like share the podcast, do all those types of things. And at this point, we're just we're not really stalling, but we have some content to cover before we get into season 6. But yeah, this is an interesting time with the show because we finished season 5, and everybody knows and remembers season 5 fondly. But the next 2 seasons are kind of like a dark spot for a lot of people because they either fell off right after 5 and they were just like, all right, well, cool, I'm done, I'm going to move on, or they were already off after 4. And so yeah, 6 is kind of a blind spot for some people, and for us as well, because like Arrows is only recently gone, and we started the show pretty quickly after the show ended. So I didn't do a rewatch of anything yet, and the stuff I have rewatched is seasons 1 and 2. So this is going to be interesting when we get into 6 and 7 to see what things are like, and then of course 8 when we get there, the final wrap up epilogue season.
Well, I look forward to your coverage of those seasons. I guess I have some mixed feelings about those seasons myself, not unlike
Mhm.
fans, but I'm sure you'll find, like with all of this stuff, perspectives might have changed, right, as you go back to it after some time. And I'm sure there's
Yeah.
more. I'm sure there's more good stuff in there that maybe forgot about, that will be like, oh,
Mhm.
like, okay, like that wasn't bad.
Yeah,
Hopefully.
we're about to get even more dragons, though. I know, I know.
Yeah. Well, good luck. I look forward to look forward to
Appreciate it.
listening. But really, Lance, thank you for your time and your insight. I really appreciate you coming on to talk about Superman and Lois.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me on. This was fun.
My pleasure. All right. So thank you, Lance. Thank you, audience. Always appreciate you tuning in. Make sure you come back next week for our next all new episode. As always, it's about what you do, it's about action. This show is part of the Flat Squirrel Podcast Network, home to Digging for Kryptonite, another exciting episode in the adventures of Superman, Summoning the Zords, and My Comic Shop History, available wherever you get your podcasts. Be sure to subscribe and leave a review today. Sign up at patreon.com/Anthony Desiato for additional content. Thank you all.